Albert Einstein once said that people like us who believe in physics know that the dividing lines between the past, present, and future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion. Now, Albert Einstein was talking about physics. I'm going to talk in this video about psychology and show you that most people from a psychological standpoint view time very inaccurately, just like they do from a physics standpoint. And that because most people view time very linearly, meaning they believe that the past is behind us and something we can't access, that we're living in the present and that the future is up ahead, because most people view time in that manner, their past is driving their present and their present is driving their future, which is a very non-optimal way of looking at time. It's also an inaccurate way of looking at time. And so with this perspective, which I'm going to show you, and I'm going to show you some slides to make it simple, you will be able to have mastery over your past, present, and future. And from a psychological standpoint, your past, present, and future all exist at the same time. And so the goal is that you're developing mastery over your past, where you're continuously grateful and learning from it, and mastery over your future, where you're having increased purpose and excitement. That is basically the essence of a positive psychology, is where you have a past that's getting better and better because you're grateful for it. Everything happens for you, not to you. And you have a future that's becoming increasingly compelling, purposeful, and exciting. As Viktor Frankl would talk about in Man's Search for Meaning, without having a why to live for, you can't bear any how. There's a lot of research that shows, and this is in psychology and even philosophy, that you can't have meaning in the present if you don't connect it to your future. Let me go ahead and share my screen, and I'm going to walk you through a bunch of slides showing you how time ultimately operates from a psychological standpoint and how you can develop mastery over your past and mastery over your future, which from a psychology standpoint makes you very flexible as a person, where you're not getting stuck and rigid in your old patterns of ways of being. You're actually constantly learning, growing, transforming. You're becoming flexible emotionally, mentally, and being able to imagine bigger and bigger and better futures. Another quote from Albert Einstein is, imagination is more important than knowledge. So you imagine bigger and better futures, and then you can adjust your identity such that you can begin to identify with your desired future self and let go of those aspects of your former self that no longer fit your desired future self. Hey, how's it going? Dr. Benjamin Hardy here, author of Be Your Future Self Now. Just a quick interruption to your YouTube video to invite you to go to futureself.com, where you can immediately download the one-page Future Self cheat sheet and the full Future Self course, as well as other amazing goodies. These will blow your mind. Go to futureself.com. Now back to your YouTube video. So one of the most ignorant things people say is that you should just live in the present and ignore the past and ignore the future. From a psychological standpoint, that's completely impossible. So your experience in the present is fully shaped by how you feel about the past and how you feel about the future. Most people, when it comes to the past, are operating this way. They think that the past is what drives the present. And so they think that the past is like a domino that's toppling things over. The opposite is actually true. If you want to develop mastery of the past and also of the present, then you actually use the present to reshape the meaning of the past constantly. You're always learning from the past, but you also see that you're not your past self. So this is what I mean by mastery of the past. Firstly, you realize that it's not the past that determines the present. It's actually the present that determines the meaning of the past. That's actually a quote from Dr. Brent Slife. He wrote a book called Time and Psychological Explanation. And he said that it's more accurate to say that the present causes the meaning of the past than to say that the past causes the meaning of the present. If you think about even culture today, as culture shifts and changes, we then use the present perspective to look at the past. We use the present as the filter of the past. And that's actually how memory works. They say that memory is always a reconstruction. You're always reconstructing the past from the perspective of the present. And so mastery of the past means that you recognize that it's actually the present that's shaping the past. You also believe that everything in the past happened for you, not to you. So no matter what happened, you're grateful for it. This is actually what post-traumatic growth is. Post-traumatic growth means that you're approaching something. Rather than avoiding your past, you actually directly approach it, you look at it, you analyze it, you learn from it, and ultimately you choose the meaning of it. You choose to be better, not bitter. And a big aspect, and there's a lot of research on this as well, is that gratitude enhances post-traumatic growth, where you use the past and your experiences, first off, to be grateful. You're grateful that they happened. Even me, myself, we all have trauma. We all have things in our past, no matter what they were, that can lead us to saying that I'm the victim rather than the victor. They can lead you to being bitter rather than better, and they can lead you to thinking that the past is driving you. This is a non-mastery form of the past, to say that I am this way because of this. Instead, you let your present self as a conscious, powerful being form meanings and ultimately choose gratitude and choose to be better as a result. One other key component of mastery of the past is having gratitude and empathy towards your past self. That could be your distant past self, but also your even close past self. Me a week ago, even 2 days ago, when I was either making mistakes or doing something great, I'm grateful for my past self. I'm empathetic towards my past self, but I also recognize that I am not my past self. And so one key aspect of mastery of your identity and mastery of your past is continuously seeing and appreciating the differences between who you are and who you were, even as short as a few days ago, and regularly referencing that and saying, how am I different than I was at the beginning of this day? What do I now know that my past self didn't know? So this is how most people operate in the future. They let the past drive the present and the present to drive the future. Dr. Joe Dispenza would call this a past-present orientation. And Dr. Daniel Gilbert also talks about how most people don't spend much time imagining their future self, and instead they project their present self onto their future self, meaning that they believe that their future self is basically the same person as their present self. This is a fixed mindset, by the way. When you assume that who you are now is who you're going to be in the future, and you're projecting the present onto the future. This is a very non-imagined way of living. It's also a very lacking of power. Human beings have a lot more power to imagine a future. Again, Albert Einstein said imagination is more important than knowledge. Also, human beings have a powerful skill we call prospection. Prospection is that we can prospect. We can create prospects for the future, and we can use the future, and we can imagine different futures, and then we can let the future dictate what we do in the present. So this is more of a mastery approach to the future. Is rather than having the present drive the future, you actually want the imagined and desired future to drive the present. And so mastery of the future means that you're clear and committed on a future. You also get emotionally connected to your future self. A lot of research on that by Dr. Hal Hirschfeld at UCLA. And then rather than operating from the present towards the future, or even from the past into the present and into the future, you actually imagine your desired future and you operate from the future, not the past. You go from a place of thinking to feeling to knowing. And going back to Dr. Daniel Gilbert, you have to actually start to think about the future, but you can then stretch that future out. This is a big aspect of increasing your motivation, is expanding your views of your future to massively powerful places. Whatever you think about, you create more of. Whatever you focus on expands. And so you might as well direct your attention and your focus towards a massively stretched out future. Going from thinking to feeling to knowing is the process of shifting your identity from a past-based identity to a future-based identity. First, you think about it. Whatever you think about, you create more of. But often thinking about a massively bigger future leads you to feeling emotionally distant from that future. And the key is actually to bring that future close to you emotionally, where you accept it, allow it, receive it, and believe that that's who you are. And then ultimately getting to a place of knowing. There's a lot of research that shows that future-based gratitude, where you're projecting gratitude into the future and thinking about how would I feel if that was true? You would feel awesome. And so you actually get to a place of gratitude and knowing. I love this quote from Florence Shin. Faith knows it has already received and acts accordingly. And so this is how you start to develop psychological flexibility. Rather than psychological rigidity, where you're overly connected to the past and blaming the past and thinking that the past is fixed and rigid, you realize that the past is flexible and that the past is a meaning and that you can constantly learn and reflect and change your views of the past. Also, you can shift your views of the future and get connected to that future and let that future ultimately lead you and drive you in the present and shift how you're being in the past. So this is a much more accurate view of time from a psychological standpoint. The past, present, and future are all happening simultaneously. And if you want to have a mastery of time in terms of your past and your future, thus allowing you to have a much better present experience, then you're constantly transforming and learning from the past, from a new and ever-evolving present self. As Dr. Daniel Gilbert would say, your present self is as present and fleeting as the present moment, and you're constantly imagining bigger, more compelling, more exciting, more purposeful views of the future and letting the future dictate your identity, your behavior, your actions, and also what you let go of in the present. So this is a more powerful, more accurate view of time. From a psychological standpoint, time is holistic. It's not sequential. It doesn't happen from the past to the present to the future. The past, present, and future are all happening simultaneously, and a mastery perspective of time and of identity is where you're constantly updating your views of your past, growing them, transforming them, learning from them. All things happen for you, not to you. You're always better, not bitter. And you're constantly evolving your views of your future, where it's a lot more intrinsically motivating. You're not worried about what other people think. You're not worried about what other people are doing. And you're also not worried about what your past self was doing. Instead of worrying so much about what happened in the past, you're actually deciding in the present, what is the most powerful way to look at my future and what is the most powerful way to look at my past. Thus, a positive present means that you have a ever improving past and an ever more purposeful, compelling future. That's how you live powerfully in the present. Have an amazing day.